and welcome to Cannalab Ed. My name is Josh, and I talk about cannabis in a scientific and educated manner as best I can. I do research as much as I can about cannabis. I want to know what medical cannabis means to me, how I can use it to treat my condition, and whether or not it's effective. So let me dive into it. This week I looked at Durban Poison. I threw that up on the microscope and got some pretty awesome images of 2500 times magnification filmed in 4K, so hopefully it turned out well and looks cool. Anyways, I've been thinking for some time about how to best describe medical cannabis in a way that strips away the common pretenses that go along with talking about marijuana. I don't think it's fair to clump together all of the stereotypes in one big heap. The truth is that every generation seems to have a general stereotype for people who use cannabis. For this reason, I think it's best to make a clear differentiation between recreational use and medical use of marijuana. To be able to make this distinction, evaluation of intent is the easiest way, but it's not very clear. Basically, if I use marijuana just because it's fun or because everyone else is doing it, then I would call that recreational use. If I use cannabis because it treats or alleviates an ailment or condition, then I would call that medical use. Because of this, a differentiation can be made, however, it's still very unclear. For example, let's say you happen upon a group of individuals partaking in the use of marijuana. From the outside, it would be impossible for me to judge the intent of each of those individuals to determine if it was medicinal or recreational use. And even if an individual uses cannabis medicinally, who's to say that they don't enjoy it just as much as a recreation, or that a recreational user can't experience medicinal benefits? So there is a difference, but without knowing the intent of each individual, judgments I make about them say more about my prejudice than about their intent. There's a lot of gray area in the field of cannabis, both scientifically and socially. So much progress needs to be made, specifically in understanding both for the people and for the plant. For too long, cannabis has been something that people don't talk about. So little scientific information is freely accessible about it, and so few are willing to talk about it definitively for the same reason. The truth is that cannabis does things to the body that we're still trying to understand, and that's a little scary, so it's understandable to have some trepidation about it, but not fear. If there's one thing that I encourage, it would be to educate yourself. Take the time to figure out what it is that cannabis means to you by finding information based on fact and science and not political or anti-drug campaigns. Try looking at history because cannabis is really nothing new. There's historical references of using cannabis as a medication for thousands of years. It wasn't until recent history that changed. Try to understand that the person standing next to you in line who might reek of marijuana may not be a stoner or a burnout, but they might be a cancer patient who uses cannabis to survive chemo, or a neuropathic pain patient who can finally get through the pain to get out of the house. Maybe they experience seizures and they use cannabis to keep that from happening. Also, you probably have noticed only a fraction of the cannabis users around you. For an experienced patient, the effects of cannabis might not be apparent to those around them. The more people I talk to, it becomes more and more apparent that cannabis transcends age, race, and religion. It might help to talk about my introduction to weed versus medical cannabis. I was introduced to marijuana in high school, like most people I think. I tried it a few times, it just really wasn't my thing. In my early 20s, it became a fun thing to do with friends, but it was still illegal, so I shied away from it. At the time, I wasn't interested in the legalized movement, and I wasn't aware of the demonizing nature that media and politics put on cannabis, the war on drugs and DARE programs and things like that. For years after my injury, I would have the occasional person ask me if I'd tried cannabis to help with my pain, and for me at the time, I would laugh, and I would say that I wasn't a stoner, I have doctors, why would I need cannabis? It wasn't until Illinois started a medical cannabis pilot program that I seriously started considering cannabis as a legitimate form of medication. In all, before I turned 25, you could probably count the number of times I'd tried marijuana on your fingers. It wasn't until after I was diagnosed with a neuropathic pain disorder for many years that I did any real research on cannabis, and that was looking at it as an alternative to the dozens of pain medications that I had already tried, that either did nothing for the pain or they screwed up my brain too much to be able to function. Oxycontin, oxycodone, tramadol, toradol, fentanyl, Norco, Tylenol-3, Lyrica, gabapentin, the list goes on. Most of these were nowhere near strong enough to help with the level of pain I was in 24/7. Not to mention that the majority of these are synthetic derivatives of the same chemicals found in heroin and cocaine and methamphetamines. The ones that weren't are chemicals designed to slow down your neurouptake ability, quite literally slowing down the brain's ability to process information. So you perceive less pain, but you also perceive less of everything else. A thought could take me 10 minutes and I would never get to that eureka moment. I would sit there thinking of words that were on the tip of my tongue, but I wouldn't be able to say them. Not to mention the other massive side effects and risks like dependency, addiction, drug abuse, death, and a long host of other long-term side effects, most of which aren't even discussed with your doctor before he's already given you the prescription. And yet, doctors have no problems handing out samples for hardcore pharmaceuticals to find the right combination for you. So they give you the first taste for free. But not cannabis. So why don't more doctors prescribe medical marijuana if it's a proven treatment for a host of ailments and conditions? The short answer is that they either don't know enough or they're afraid they might get in trouble if they do. I tried discussing using cannabis with my doctors, and all but one of them were either unwilling or against helping me get my medical card. Things have changed slightly in Illinois in the past year to make it a little easier. Before, your doctor had to send in a form to the state saying that you had a condition on the list that the state keeps and that you would benefit from the use of cannabis as a medication. Now, doctors just confirm that you have something that's on that list because the state already knows that there are benefits from cannabis. That's what put it on the list in the first place. Overall, the information that I've found on cannabis as a medicine has been overwhelmingly positive. But it seems like everywhere I look, people just say the same thing. More research is needed. So why is it that so few are willing to say that we know enough at least to say that cannabis is safe as a medication? Unlike other prescriptions, no one's died from smoking too much weed or eating too many edibles, but it's still something that isn't out in the open. A question I get asked a lot is, would cannabis help for my blank? And the blank could be anything, whether it be it could help my friend with cancer, it could help with my anxiety or my sleep, my inability to sleep, and things like that. Usually the answer is maybe, yes, sometimes, but only to a certain extent. If it's on the list, yeah, you would probably benefit, but it doesn't mean that it's a miracle drug. It's not perfect, and there are legitimate reasons for concerns and precautions to take, like you would with any other medication. Start low, go slow. Learn how cannabis affects you before trying to go out and do things. Find out the best ratio of cannabinoids that help with the specific thing that you're trying to treat. Learn about the endocannabinoid system and how exactly cannabis interacts with your body. When your doctor writes you a prescription, he includes how many pills to take and when to take them, as well as how many refills there are, so he can talk to you about how the medication is treating you and whether or not it's being beneficial. With the prescriptions, they send home with you these sheets of paper from the pharmacy that have all of this chemical information. Warnings, side effects, as well as information about how the drug interacts with your body. Here in Illinois, when you start using the medical cannabis program, you don't get any of that information about how to take it and when to take it, as well as how all of these weirdly named cannabis strains are different. The burden of responsibility for managing your medication and gathering up all of that information that would normally come with a prescription is on the patient. So if you're looking at using medical cannabis medicinally, then you need to do that research for yourself and be proactive about it, because otherwise you're just getting high. Hopefully that puts something into context for you. Yes, medical cannabis can be greatly beneficial. No, it's not perfect for everyone. It's a type of medication that works on the body in ways that we still don't fully understand. It's perceived differently by everyone. And so for one person, it might be the thing that makes their life 100 times better. And for other people, they might not enjoy it at all. Who are we kidding? But hopefully this has sort of pushed you to start learning and start digging, try and find that information, put that education into your brain so that you know for sure what it is that cannabis does, instead of just things that you see on news blurbs and talked about in social media about however context your friends talk about it. Be effective. This week I looked at a sativa strain called Durban Poison from Cresco Labs. It is a pure sativa strain, so I skipped over the whole let me talk you through it while it's on the microscope thing. I just sort of supercut it all together. So brief description, it's a pure sativa strain. It really only has THC and THCA in it. So they're very clear trichomes, not very many characteristics to be seen. But because of that, it was very easy to mount some of these trichomes on a slide and then be able to stain them and then oil submerge them to try and be able to identify some of these internal structures. And I did pretty well, as I toot my own horn. But it was really interesting to see some of these individual trichomes at 2,500 times magnification, because at this point we're blowing it up huge and being able to figure out how these things produce all these chemicals that interact with our bodies so well. It's really interesting, and it's still being understood. New breakthroughs in cannabis are being made every day. So take the time to educate yourself, dig into it. It is so much fun. There's so much information, so much good information, so many good people to learn from and talk to. Hopefully you found it interesting or you learned something. If you did, let me know, whether it be a like, a comment, subscribe. This is YouTube. I have to ask. That's my ask for you. So that was Durban Poison and a bit of my ramblings about what medical cannabis is versus marijuana. Get in touch with me if you have any questions. I am happy to talk to people.